Congratulations on great work. Really good work. My first question to you, and we'll go to the audience very soon, but your film starts, by the way, Desiree Jade Shippers, right? And Princess Hairstyle. Your film starts, we're there, we're already there. What we don't know is, for you to make this film, what got you to say, that's enough, I'm just going to start recording everything? Because you seem to be so fed up by the time the film starts.
That's basically what happened. That was my third phone call that had gone over the 2-hour mark with them. So at that point, I flipped open my 2017 MacBook Air is what I filmed on, and I just started recording because I was like, this is so absurd. Nobody would believe me if I told them, or it just seemed like a comedy to me. So that's what prompted me to start recording, and also because I was trying to keep everything straight in my head, like all the reasons that they're telling me I can't access this care. So it was part documentation, part for my own sanity.
So if we add up the chunks of time, 2 years before you got the treatments, and then another 18 months before they finally took the charges off the books? It's a huge ordeal.
Yeah, so the drug that I was trying to access is called Entyvio. At the time, it was the only drug for ulcerative colitis specifically on the market. The others were just general immunosuppressants. So my doctor wanted to put me on that drug. And then over the course of 2 years and over 5 medications, that's what it took to access.
Mm-hmm. So the concept of fail first is widespread, I think. I mean, I have a personal example of my own family where someone is asked to try other things that they know are going to be ineffective to finally get to the point where you can get drugs that will work. So just question, what is your awareness on whether things are changing or are just people really still facing these kinds of roadblocks now?
I feel like people are definitely still facing the roadblocks. There's a wonderful organization I'd like to shout out called Fail First Hurts. You can get on their website.
Fail First Hurts.
Fail First Hurts. And kind of read about their activism. They try to do some policy change. They tell people's stories is the main thing. Another thing about Fail First is it's also called step therapy as a way to make it seem like a nice step up to better medication, but it's a Fail First policy, so it's just something to be aware of.
Questions for Desiree? I mean, is it safe to ask, have others out here been involved with this kind of frustration and sort of the agony of being sick and not being able to get what you need? Fortunately, no one is saying yes. Well, I think your film is emblematic of this problem. And how do you feel now? I'm kind of curious. Do you continue to take treatments? Are you feeling good?
Yes, yeah. Since I've got the medication, I've sustained remission for almost 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Yes, we have a question. Go, please.
Well, I was just curious. I'm sorry, were you? I was just curious how you made the decision to switch to the animation, which I thought was such a nice contrast between your exasperation on the camera on the phones and the animation seemed to describe kind of all the inside stuff.
That's a really good question, thank you. It started out, when I was on the phone, I would sit and doodle and draw, like a lot of people do. And I drew this really silly version of myself in my cow t-shirt and my hairy legs, and that's what I felt like. And initially, in the first iterations of this film, I did not have my image, because nobody likes to look at themselves, especially when you're editing for hours and hours. I hated it. And one of my professors was finally like, dear God, show yourself. Like, you are expressing emotions, your story is valid, show your face. But the animation came in that avoidance of trying to show myself, but also that she could, the little animated girl, could express more than I could on screen. And it kind of expressed my inner world, and the music and the animation and the drama of it felt real to me in my experience, while the phone calls were really boring and bureaucratic.
Okay, that is exceptionally good technique. Really, it added a dimension to the film that was really great, actually. And so, I mean, thank you for the question with the idea of the emotional dichotomy, right? On the phone, you're just suffering through it in a very one-dimensional way, but by adding the other elements, people can see more into you, which is good. Okay, thank you. So, Princess, this film, oh, I'm sorry, there's another question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two thoughts.
Speak up, please.
Oh, it reminds me of, if anyone's seen Lizzie McGuire, I don't know if that's the audience here, but there's always like the animated Lizzie McGuire, and she's always expressing all the inner emotions, and that was cool. But also, I'm like, would you ever send this film to any of the administrators at these insurance companies, or like, I don't know. I feel like they need to see, like they're so removed from this process that people deal with. And I'd love to watch one of them watch it and feel like a jerk.
Did everybody hear that question?
Yeah.
Yes, good. You're on.
Yeah, so as far as next steps for this film, I would like to use it in advocacy and policy change. I'm not sure who I would send it to and if they would watch it. Maybe that's me being like cynical and hardened from this whole experience, but I would definitely love to get this in the eyes of administrators and of health insurance policymakers and the people who are in the upper levels making these criteria that clinician was testing my ability to get this medicine up against for sure.
What about Fail First Hurts? Would they be?
I'm working on connecting with them. I'm also working on connecting with ulcerative colitis support groups and organizations and other organizations that support people with autoimmune diseases as well.
Oh, anybody else with questions? Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate what somebody said, that animation was wonderful. The music, I really liked how you fit the music with the pictures, and it really kept us connected to everything that was happening. So I appreciate both parts of the film and just how it came out. And I'm a nurse. I really liked the experience, your experience being so clear to us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to say, nurses are the people who are doing all the paperwork for me on my doctor's end. And I had a really wonderful nurse who's basically the reason I got access to the drug, because she filed all the appeals. She stayed on the phone with health insurance for a long time. I'm sure that's not why she got her nursing degree, but it really saved me. So.
Yeah. It does strike you when watching this film, the enormous amount of work is required and persistence to get something vital done in the system, because it failed first. You know, the hoops you have to jump through. So Princess, on your film, it picks up a lot of momentum from beginning to end, starting this important site during a stressful time in the country, but by the end, we're seeing growth in the number of people who are working for the 19th. We're seeing, increased diversity in the group. What was your sense in making the film? Did it feel genuine that there was a lot of progress going on, that they went through these growing pains, which you well documented, but came out the other side feeling much stronger? And what would you think about the future of the 19th, having been so close to them for so long?
Yeah, so it's 3 filmmakers. Heather Courtney started the project. She knew Emily and her husband in Austin, and she heard about Emily leaving the Texas Tribune and wanted to start this new, digital newsroom. And Heather started the film wanting to just follow them for the first year of their journey during the election year. So it started off as a totally different film. Then, it started off for, women coming together with this new digital newsroom, changing kind of like the white male status quo on how news is being delivered and how we always receive it. And then, as they started to grow, Emily, they started off with $20,000 and like 5 women, and by the end of the film, you see Emily state that, they've raised over $35 million, which is just amazing during a pandemic. It also started off for women, kind of by women, and then also they hired Kate, who brought the LGBTQ plus perspective and how do we work through gender reform, gender equity, and honoring pronouns, avoiding misgendering, and the world is changing. So they had to do a lot of internal work on that and how do they be inclusive. And so it was a lot of ups and downs. And we quickly realized, like Heather realized, I need to bring on other filmmakers. I need to build a team that resembles what the 19th is doing and how the 19th is being inclusive. So that's when Chelsea Hernandez came on. She's a second-time filmmaker in Austin, and then myself, I came on, and our producer is Diane Kwan.
Right.
So we had
Our
a strong
favorites.
team, we had a lot of different voices, and we were kind of going through the same challenges that the 19th was, of listening to other folks from different perspectives. And as you see in the film, it's like one of the key learning experiences is how organizations, the leadership in organizations can learn from their staff, the people who are doing the work, who are keeping you afloat, how you can listen and break some of those leadership patterns of, you know, we're dominant, we're gonna run down these, systems in play when those systems are not really working. So even though they started with great intention, there's still a lot to work through, but they did the work. There's a lot we didn't even film. It seems like we were in a room with them a lot, and we were, but some of those tough discussions around gender equity and how can leadership learn from staff, there was a lot of discussions, a lot of work they did internally, and it shows in how the staff represents the 19th, how they all work together and how they grew together.
I thought you documented that exceedingly well. Sort of the changes that leadership had to embrace in order to make this a lasting kind of endeavor. Very well done. In terms of trust, it seems it started as a project, as you just mentioned, to sort of cover Emily. But as it grew, were there any issues of trust? In other words, staying with them in the room, being ever present? Was there at any point where they said, we'd like you to sort of back off a little bit or not cover every single thing, it's a little too much? Did you sense any of that?
Yeah, when the core group of women in the beginning agreed, they had a lot of meetings to agree to have the documentary on them. What happened was they grew, Emily fundraised, and they grew and they grew, and those people were not, they didn't have, the time to process that, the filmmakers are gonna be with us in our space, during this very intimate time and hard time in the country. So it was challenging. We had to be very strategic as filmmakers. As filmmakers doing documentaries, most of the time you're just following a participant for hours and hours on a day. There's a lot of footage you don't use. We had to change that whole concept. It's a pandemic. We're going into their space. We have to follow COVID protocol. We had to be strategic on, okay, we're gonna go in, we're gonna check on what stories they're doing. We're gonna go in and try to get the best coverage we can to make a scene to represent the story that they covered, what kind of cutaways or visuals that we can get in an amount of time. So we were only there, sometimes it would be as short as an hour or a couple of hours, and it really wasn't full days unless they were really out in the field when you're running around with them. But a lot of their important reporting was at their desk. It's a digital newsroom. The reporters are all over, even though they're based in Austin. The reporters are all over, and it was always meant to be that way.
Great answer. Who has questions? Questions? Yes, go ahead.
It's interesting to see what the reporters are going through as you watch the film and how they're also experiencing the news stories that are happening because they're from marginalized groups. And I'm wondering how you witness people take care of themselves, because I guess when you're a reporter, you have to be on all the time and aware. You always have to be ready to report on whatever story it is. So it just seems exhausting and very difficult.
Yeah, and what makes the 19th different is that they're allowed to tap into their lived experience to tell a story, which has not been done in newsrooms, visually or in print. It is always from the objective white male status quo, from white male's viewpoint, really. So they're tapping into their lived experience. You can tell Aaron was kind of drained to write about Breonna Taylor. It's just amazing that this new scrappy team was the first to break that story and, bring national attention. Also, Aaron was the first to get an interview with Kamala Harris. You can see Kate really struggling to really write stories that from a perspective where most people don't even consider them human. They say it in the film. So it was very challenging. And then on top of that, to have someone documenting that whole experience. So it was very challenging. There were moments where we had to stop filming, give them space, and of course we're like, we're missing so much, but we hope that you understand, kind of get it from the film, you know, but it was very challenging, yes.
Any other questions before we break? Yes, one more, Matt, go ahead.
I'm just curious about kind of the future of the film, where you are now and where it's headed and how people can have the opportunity to see it.
Yeah, so we actually have distribution through PBS and Indie Lens, so
Here.
it will be airing on broadcast early spring of next year on a national platform. So we really do hope it reaches a lot of audiences, you know, around the U.S. and beyond. We're trying to get international sales right now. And we are in film festivals. We're going to be in Hot Docs Symposium soon. I think Globe Boston or something like that. It's going to be there. So we're just submitting to a lot of film festivals. As you know, the strike is going on. It's
Sure.
affecting everything. But film festivals, thank goodness for Indie Lens, PBS, so it will be on a national platform. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all. Oh, was there
one
another
more.
question? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously, when you begun the film, like you didn't know what the trajectory would be, and their position they're beginning is incredibly precarious as like a news institution, and during the pandemic as well. So, the question is for you, like, how was that experience following them as the story unraveled and not knowing where it would go, or like, would it have a positive outcome, or what the response would be?
Can you sort of paraphrase the question?
It's kind of like, what is the experience as a filmmaker following the participants as they're reporting, and as the newsroom is growing.
Yeah, like you don't know if it's going to be successful or not. Kind of in that way.
Yeah. You know, I feel like when we all came together on the film, I feel like we knew what they were doing was special and it was different. And what really encouraged us even more is we would actually read the headlines. Like, you would know that they are coming to the journalistic lens from a whole different perspective. And we put a lot of headlines up here, and you can tell their headlines are very different compared to other newsrooms. They were so intentional, like those early calls with Breonna Taylor and, you know, Emily not really knowing if that was going to be it was the right story for the 19th to tell. The Central Park discussion, those were tough things for us to, you know, for the 19th to look back on in their early days when, you know, sometimes Emily may look like she just is clueless to some of these stories being important. They just did a lot of work behind the scenes, and they had a lot of tough discussions that we knew about, and we were like, yeah, we think they're gonna make it. Like, we hope that the world will see and recognize the importance of how they are changing the landscape of journalism. And so we just kept following, and we had to, because we're like, well, if anyone's going to see it, we have to keep documenting.
Have a nice round of applause for both of these filmmakers. Good work.